Now, our next guests are here to discuss leveling the playing field for Black job seekers. I'd like to welcome Kyle Horn, founder of America's Job Honor Awards, and Leslie Short, CEO of the diversity consultancy company, The CavuGroup. How are you all doing?
Doing great.
Yeah? All right, good to hear, but let's get right to it. For decades, the Black unemployment rate has consistently been about 2 times higher than the white unemployment rate in the U.S. How can companies do better at hiring Black employees?
Who would you like to answer that first?
Whoever would, I'd like to throw it to you.
Go right ahead.
I mean, honestly, you have to look outside your circle. I say it all the time when I'm working with companies. If you constantly tell someone, hey, post here, post there, but without looking to post outside of where you normally go, of your neighborhood or what you're comfortable with, then you're going to end up getting the same people for the same job. Mm-hmm. It takes work.
So what can people do to actually help increase that rate? Because if you're doing the same thing, again, there's that Einstein cliche, insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. How can you get different results, and what's that different thing that you could do to get those different results?
How about who's in the room? Let's make it really simple. If you don't have representation in the room that can reach out to a community and be authentic in their reach, then you're doing the same thing over and over again. So start representation at all levels of your company. From the mailroom to the boardroom, there needs to be representation.
Kyle, your thoughts? Your thoughts on that?
I entirely agree with all those suggestions. And, the main area of focus for our nonprofit, America's Job Honor Awards, is individuals who have employment barriers, most notably criminal convictions and disabilities. And given the disproportionate impact of America's criminal justice system on minorities, I think that no company's diversity and equity program is complete without first taking a look at how they can level the playing field in terms of Americans returning from prison. And so what we try to do is convince employers, many of whom have blanket policies that preclude them from hiring those individuals, to reassess those policies and to realize that individuals who can demonstrate that their lives are on a new trajectory, they're deserving of a second chance.
All right. I would like to take the opportunity, because right now in our conversation, we have a very, is very diverse on every particular level. I, myself, being from Europe, looking the way that I do, and, it is what it is. So, Kyle, I'd like to throw it to you. Do you feel that diversity inclusion programs are effective? From your vantage point.
Certainly, I appreciate that. It depends upon the company. I think that there's some emerging cynicism that a lot of companies will write a really good mission statement for diversity and equity and inclusion, but the practical reality sometimes differs from that. So I think execution is mission critical here, and that's why we're focused on the fact that, let me give you a case study.
Sure.
My home state, Iowa. Mm-hmm. Black Iowans are 7 times more likely to be convicted of a marijuana-related offense than whites, and yet they acknowledge smoking weed at about the same rates. And now some people, when they hear that statistic, they immediately conclude, well, they must have been engaged in some greater crime that then resulted in them having the marijuana offense tacked on. But no, that's a national crime reporting statistics where the marijuana conviction was the most serious of those crimes for which they were convicted. So clearly we have a disproportionate rate of conviction on the front end. These are individuals who are going into prison. Many times they emerge from prison with onerous supervision requirements, probation, parole, et cetera, that are difficult to comply with. Sometimes they have a technical violation, results in them going right back in, and boom, they're institutionalized. And from an employer perspective, that individual becomes radioactive. And as a result of that, we have hundreds of thousands of individuals who are virtually exiled from the workforce by virtue of their criminal history. And it's time for employers to reconsider their pre-screen requirements and to give consideration to those candidates. Rather than writing them off without ever having met them, they need to invite them in for an interview, hear their story. And if the individual can make a compelling case that their life is on a new trajectory, that they are responsible, that they are workforce ready, then that employer should give that individual a chance. And the public, consumers, should require that of employers. Increasingly, consumers, particularly young consumers, they want to do business with companies that demonstrate a social conscience and whose workforce reflects the community. And so it's a great manifestation of corporate social responsibility, and we need to see more of it.
I love the fact that you pointed to that a lot of times there is a lazy assessment of the data before you, and that we need to have some more nuance to actually go in and see why, and see if there's some people that can be brought out of that mass of 100,000. But I'd like to throw it to you, Leslie, same thing, because you mentioned representation. Diversity and inclusion programs, are they effective? And if so, tell us how. If not, why not? And how can we create more representation in those rooms?
Well, one, the conversation of jails in that pipeline is a different conversation than diversity, equity, and inclusion
of course.
programs. So it's one thing I just want to make clear.
Of course.
The issue is that people are so busy looking at diversity, which is the checkbox. If you can bring in all the diversity that you want, if you're not prepared in your company to be inclusive and and be equitable, which is access to promotions, to learning, to opportunities, then you're already out the game. And then your company culture needs to be prepared for that diversity of thought and of people and of color and of cultures to be included, and then to also have the equitable options to work in that company. It's 4 pillars. They're separate words. Diversity, inclusion, equity, and company culture must be there in order for them to work. And it can't be a program. That's the thing. DEI cannot be an add-on to a company. It must be built into the foundation of a company.
How do we do that? How do we do that? How do we embed that into the culture of a company? Because there are a lot of new companies that are coming up, startups, businesses that be started in the pandemic, new businesses that will be started because, if jobs aren't coming back, people will be forced to create them. So how do you embed that into the culture of new companies?
Leadership.
Or even existing
Everything
ones?
starts from the head. It's really that simple. As hard as it is, leadership in their mind shift, understanding diversity will actually benefit their bottom dollar. Doing the right thing, and the right thing is having the right people in the room to the community for which you are speaking with. And even if your community may be small because you are new, you are still looking for consumers. And to represent consumers, someone needs to be in that room that understands them. And that can be through partnerships, that can be through consultancy, that can be through hiring. But it takes time for you to have to think about it and for you to be able to execute it. And not to be the smartest one in the room thinking you can speak to every culture.
So you have to it has to start at the top, and then you have to have a diverse managerial workforce that then can relate that the new pool of applicants can relate to. Is that correct?
That helps. Look, if leadership doesn't buy in, then leadership is not giving dollars towards it. Leadership is, you can bring in who you want, but then they're not given the equity, the assets to really grow. So leadership must want to be part of growing a diverse culture.
A diverse culture. All right. So one more question before we wrap it up, and I'd like to throw it to you, Kyle. One of the most important things for myself personally is, which I work towards every day, is the reduction of the wealth gap that exists in North America. How can we help reduce that wealth gap? And from your vantage point, what are some initiatives that we can do, even from the workforce, to help reduce that wealth gap that exists in America today?
Well, my perspective is, as Leslie pointed out, it's a narrow subset of this focus. And having emerged as I did from the staffing and recruiting industry, I saw firsthand the negative impact that the presuppositions that a lot of employers have on individuals who are trying to get opportunities. So the bottom line answer to your question is create opportunity, and don't unnecessarily wall individuals off from that opportunity. And that includes individuals who, like me, like so many others in their lives, have blown it and have changed, and who are in need of a second chance. And I think that when employers do take that shorthand methodology of simply saying, nope, won't consider that individual because they are from this group of people who have convictions in their background, they are essentially walling themselves away from potentially some of the best candidates they will ever see.
Right.
People who have been through hell have a tendency to not feel entitled. They feel grateful for an opportunity. And what we often see is individuals who have had periods of struggle in their lives frequently demonstrate remarkable work ethic
Yes.
and loyalty because someone gave them a chance.
That is a really interesting point. One of the things that 50 Cent, the rapper turned music mogul and TV mogul, he said that because he's gone through his youth, his young adult life with crime and some traumatic experiences, he says when he goes into a job opportunity, he is not fazed by anything, and that has helped him develop a work ethic, according to himself. So that's actually an interesting point and something for employers to consider when they see that. Now, Leslie, your thoughts on the same question?
Absolutely. It's pay equity. It's being transparent or visible on what others are getting paid. See, I can sit next to someone and have the same credentials, but be paid less because I'm a Black woman and not realize it until someone actually speaks about it.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, there needs to be a transparency on pay equity. And the understanding that the barriers shouldn't be higher because of your color or your gender. And that's what's happening a lot. They're making you jump through hoops to get to a position that someone else has that may or may not have the same skills that you have. So the visibility of pay equity and the opportunity to reach for those jobs need to be there.
To someone, and we're going to wrap it up after this, to someone who says, playing devil's advocate, that a business will pay for a service what the service provider will allow you to pay for it. Is it a matter of should people ask for more? Should you develop the skill of negotiating, or is it on the employer to say, look, this is what I'm paying this guy. You have the same skills, and therefore I will pay that if it can eat into their profits. What do you say to that?
I think there's some companies that actually are transparent about their pay equity, and you have to get to a certain point, and you get to that, you get this, you get that, you get this, and it's very visible. Otherwise, open your mouth. That's why you have a voice. You want a seat at the table. A seat at the table is being able to express what you need and what you want. Mm-hmm. And then know how to negotiate it and make sure that I always say you have backup, and that's your skills and that's your work ethic. It needs to be there. Mm-hmm. But you have to ask for it.
Have to ask for it. Thank you both so much for having this conversation with me today. I appreciate it.
Pleasure to be with you.
All right. Thank you.